The Royals decided to give Jonathan India another contract. Do we agree with that decision? We'll tell you our thoughts next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. And you can listen to us on wherever you download your podcast. That could be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For you first-time listeners wondering what to expect from this channel, well, even during holiday weeks like this one, we bring you episodes Monday through Friday, 30-minute episodes in length. And in season, we also have the Locked On Royals postcast, where a different host in Chance Lebo goes to you live for about 15 to 20 minutes after the game. Before we dive into segment number one, I want to tell you first that we are very proud to announce that we are the #1 sports podcast network in the country. Very happy about it. We've been working very hard. So thank you to all the listeners that have been listening to us each and every day. And today's title sponsor is Gametime. And you can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. So get started today over at Gametime. There was a flurry of moves made on Friday, mainly because it was the non-tender deadline for every team in Major League Baseball, and the Royals were able to make a couple of moves that some expected, yes, some maybe caught us a little bit off guard. The news that broke on Friday, a little bit before 4 p.m., was that the Royals agreed to a 1-year, $8 million contract with Jonathan India, so they avoid arbitration. They're not non-tendering his contract, and for now, he is staying in Kansas City. So want to be very clear that just because they gave Jonathan India the $8 million over the 1 year, it doesn't mean that he is going to be the opening day second baseman. It's looking that way for sure, but they could still move him at some point in the offseason. Now, what's his trade value? I think you all know the answer to that question. They also non-tendered MJ Melendez. That was a very expected move. And then the surprise move to me was non-tendering Taylor Clark, who was cheap, coming off a good year, and deciding to tender Bailey Falter's contract. So Falter is going to be going into spring training needing to make the roster, or he's going to be DFA'd. And maybe the Royals feel fine with that, where if he really surprises and looks like he's improved in the offseason, he can join the bullpen. I highly doubt he would be in the rotation, but worst case scenario for Bailey Falter, he gets DFA'd and he can either become a free agent or accept the minor league option and go to, actually, he wouldn't be able to. He'd have to be DFA'd and somebody else would be picking him up because he's out of options at this point and he'd be looking for another big league contract. The one that stole the show, though, as you can tell if you're watching on YouTube, was Jonathan India. And when Ken Rosenthal reported this on Friday, it was met with a very negative reaction from the Royals fan base. And maybe that was due to expecting him to get non-tendered. Maybe you just lost hope in his ability to bounce back based on what he did in 2025. But I do see both sides to the negativity and also why the Royals would want him back. For starters, on the Royals side, you got to look at who's on the roster and who can play second base. So the options they have are Jonathan India, Michael Massey, Nick Lofton, and we'll throw Tyler Tolbert in that conversation. Coming off of last year, even though Jonathan India had a down year and was not good defensively, offensively, he still was the best option they had at that position. And as you've heard me say before this offseason, they want more sure things in the lineup. They want to raise the floor of some of these positions on the team. And yeah, they could go out there and bring back Adam Frazier and run a platoon situation at second. But it's probably more of, do we gamble and non-tender Jonathan India? He bounces back somewhere else, and we go with Michael Massey. And Michael Massey plays just like he did last year. That's not going to be good enough for what you need at second base. And Nick Lofton's not giving you that. Tyler Tolbert's not giving you that because both those guys aren't everyday players. What is going to be different for Jonathan India, assuming that he's the opening day second baseman, is I believe he will be a second baseman, and that's it. I do not see him moving around and playing third and playing left field. he will be a second baseman or he will be DHing. And it's far likelier he's just going to be at second base instead of DHing, because you need to have Salvador Perez DHing a lot. You need Jack Caglione DHing. You need those guys filling up that spot in the lineup. Jonathan India, when he's in the lineup, needs to be at second base. If he's not at second base, he needs to be on the bench. And so I do feel it's going to help his defensive metrics. I feel a lot of the poor numbers that he produced in 2025 was directly correlated to learning left field, to learning third base, to bouncing around, to moving up and down in the order. I feel you can give Jonathan India one spot, and that's what he's sticking with. And if he doesn't perform, he doesn't perform. At the end of the day, an $8 million contract on a one-year deal is not really going to break you financially. I mean, you want to have more production than you did last year because you could have used that $8 million maybe elsewhere. To me, though, this is more so about what the Royals have on their roster and more so about what's available in free agency. Luis Arraez is out there. We've got some people that really don't want Luis Arraez, and it's very clear to the rest of baseball that they are hesitant to give him a contract as well. Maybe because he's asking for too much and the defense isn't good. He's more of a singles hitter. And the Royals decided our focus needs to be in the outfield. And they would feel better going into the season if Jonathan India was their everyday second baseman over Michael Massey. And you go back to last year, he was banged up for basically the entire year. He played north of 130 games. But how many of those was he really 100%? I don't believe many. And if you want to stay a little optimistic, and I won't fault you if you're not, some of his injuries were freak injuries. I mean, he got hit in the head on the first series of the year by Emmanuel Clase of all people. So he gets dinged up there. He gets spiked a little bit later on in the season. So that messes up his shin and his ankle. And then he's got the quad injury that was running to third base. That was more of a natural injury, not a freak one. Then he had the wrist injury late in the year. I mean, you roll the dice and you say, well, we have 4 different injuries this year. Will he be moving around and playing different positions? No on both those questions, for me at least. I feel he'll be healthier if he's just stuck to second base and probably have a better chance of putting numbers closer to 2024 than he did in 2025. I still would like them to have some insurance there at second base, whether that be bringing back Adam Frazier, whether that be bringing back somebody in a trade that gives you some comfort there, gives you some depth, because I feel it says a heck of a lot more about what the Royals had on their roster than their true belief in Jonathan India bouncing back and having a really good season. As for the other guys that we want to touch on here, I mean, Taylor Clark getting non-tendered. I mean, I can praise Taylor Clark all I want and say that the numbers are really good. He can do that again. The likelihood is very low that he could be one of the best pitchers or best bullpen pitchers in terms of whip in 2026. The Royals also went out there and signed Alex Lang. He does have an option, as some of you astutely pointed out when we had that acquisition and talked about that acquisition. But he could be optioned to AAA if he doesn't have that good of a spring training or he's not healthy. But to me, this is more so about making room for Alex Lang, who they really believe in, and kind of becoming that next reclamation project in the Royals bullpen. So if Taylor Clark is the odd man out, I guess so be it. It sounds a little bit harsh, but really so be it. I mean, I'd rather have some younger options like Jonathan Bolin, Luinder Avila out there that could compete for a bullpen spot over Taylor Clark. And you signed Taylor Clark to a minor league deal last year, and he turned into a pretty good arm for your bullpen. Was he one of the best in your bullpen? No, he was on the bottom half of your bullpen and pitched pitched well, I should say, for a chunk of the season. He wasn't, a guy that was lighting it up on the radar gun and just was your lockdown setup guy for, 5 to 6 months of the season. He was serviceable. And that's why they believe Alex Lang can be serviceable again, or somebody like a Bolin or an Avila can provide that relief where Taylor Clark, could have, I guess I should say. As for Melendez, there's a chance that he catches on somewhere. I'm sure that he'll get some calls just because there is some raw power. There is clearly the athleticism there. At the end of the day, though, his time in KC was up. I mean, there was really no more opportunity for him with the Royals. And that's fine to move on with it. And if he succeeds like Ryan O'Hearn, that's just baseball, right? And I know we can blame the Royals for not developing him properly. He's had multiple years to figure it out in Kansas City. And sometimes it's not just, oh, you find better coaching and they tapped into your potential. Sometimes it's as simple as needed a fresh start, needed to go to an organization where my name doesn't send a shudder down fans' spines of, oh, no, he's in the lineup again. Oh, no, he made the roster. If he goes to somewhere like Miami, or he goes to the Nationals, somewhere in the National League that's very removed from the Royals, they're going to have no idea really who MJ Melendez is unless they look up the numbers, they go to Baseball Savant, they go to Fangraphs and see what he's capable of. But the numbers last year and the year before that were not good enough to give him another year, to tender his contract. It was the time for the Royals to move on. And now it's about somebody else stepping up as minor league depth for them in AAA. More outfield spots, more opportunities. And they made a couple of moves already in early November. They had Meisner, who they got, who was DFA'd from Tampa Bay. Kind of feels like the replacement to MJ Melendez in Omaha. And he'll have a chance to compete for a bench spot come spring training. But those were the big moves that we saw on Friday for the non-tender deadline. What did you make of the Royals tendering Jonathan India's contract and non-tendering Taylor Clark and MJ Melendez? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. When we come back, a big name did get non-tendered, and he might line up with the Royals if they choose to go that route. We'll talk about it next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can listen to us on wherever you download your podcast. Want to tell you about the first sponsor today in FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. For my pick, I'm going to look to Thanksgiving Day, Chiefs and Cowboys. I will take the under on the total for that game, and I will take the over on receiving yards for Travis Kelce going up against that Cowboys defense. The biggest name, I would say, that was non-tendered on Friday, and we had teased it a little bit on Thursday's episode of last week, was Adolis Garcia. So Adolis Garcia, postseason hero for the Rangers in 2023, such immense power, and I believe he still has that type of power, but the overall offensive numbers have dipped the last two seasons. And the Rangers were in a position where, as we even saw yesterday, they're trying to shed some payroll a little bit. I mean, Marcus Semien, they trade to the Mets, they get Brandon Nimmo in return, and Nimmo actually does have some money tied up in a long-term contract that keeps him through age 38, but Marcus Semien was one of the more expensive middle infielders in all of baseball. And so with Adolis Garcia, it probably came down to that point too of, we're paying him X amount of money. He's had back-to-back down seasons. We have a younger outfield that we need to get those guys in the lineup, and Adolis Garcia is actively blocking that. He's an elite defender. He still has 20 home run power in that bat. Higher side, you're probably saying 25 to 30, but realistically, I'm still putting him in the 15 to 20 range. And he's going to be a very sought-after name in free agency. What is that going to cost the Royals if they choose to go that route? I would say anywhere from 8 to 12 million. That's my guess, whether it be a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal. I mean, if you are to go in that direction, you are talking about a bat that can play nicely, I would say, at Kauffman Stadium. I mean, it's not a hitter-friendly ballpark, but neither was Globe Life. I mean, he played a very cavernous outfield, and he had multiple big-time home run seasons playing in that ballpark. And the only spot I would say he'd fit in this lineup would be in right field as a platoon option for Jack Caglione. Let me be very clear because I need to reiterate this. His splits against left-handed pitchers last season was not good. He was better against right-handers. I will say this, though. Jack Caglione can be early on in the season the strong side platoon guy where you're facing more righties. He's getting more reps out there. But if I'm looking for an alternative where maybe Jack Caglione struggles, maybe, he gets banged up early on in the season, I would feel better in turning to an option like Garcia than who they have on the current roster. It kind of goes hand in hand with what we were talking about with Jonathan India. If you go this route of Adolis Garcia, yeah, he was a slightly below average bat last season, but I believe, it was Alex Duvall does still great Royals stuff on Twitter. He pointed out that it should be a no-brainer for the Royals to bring him in, and even his production the last 2 years would make him the second best Royals outfielder. So that's the floor that you are raising there, and I'm only viewing him as a true platoon option. His numbers weren't great against lefties, but he also was playing consistently in Texas. You can protect his health, you have elite defense, and you still have that power off the bench from the right side. There are other names out there that could fit the Royals a little bit more financially. Mike Tauchman comes to mind. He was non-tendered by the White Sox, was an above-average bat last year in around 95 to 100 games, always gets on base, very high walk rate. The issue there is that he's a left-handed bat. And I think if the Royals want, some depth on the bench, it's not that they're going to turn their nose up at a left-handed bat. They do need right-handed hitters, though. And they need to have right-handed hitters that can really make a difference late in the game. And I feel whether that's at the plate or in the field, Adolis Garcia can be that guy. Another part to this, too, is that Jack Caglione is not a good defender right now. He is still learning that position. And I would like to have that reinforcement. I would like to have that fallback, that cushion of the alternative option if you are to pull him in the seventh inning, if you're to pinch hit for him in the seventh inning or the eighth inning, you're turning to somebody in right field who's really good at handling a cavernous outfield. We saw late last season when they pulled Jack Caglione, you were getting Adam Frazier in right field. You were getting John Rave in right field. Maybe it was Tyler Tolbert. And they handled the position well enough. But Adolis Garcia is one of the better defending right fielders in the sport. And even last year, with the down numbers, right, being a below average bat, not having as much power, he is a very low OBP guy. I mean, he is a different version. He's not quite the same hitter as Salvador Perez, but he's not far off. He is not going to walk. He is going to strike out, but he is going to hit the ball incredibly hard, and he is going to leave the yard more than a few times. I feel for what they're looking for in a platoon option, he could be that guy that you turn to and feel fine about a Caglione-Garcia split in right field. I really do feel that it would be a deal that matches up. Now, I'm going to go back to the deal of this, the financial deal of it. $8 to $12 million feels a little bit steep, especially for a platoon bat. I go back to, though, that J.J. Picollo said we don't want to overpay for a platoon right-handed hitter for Jack Caglione, but it might be the spot that we're in. We know we need to have somebody out there that can complement his bat in right field. As I've said so many times, going back to last year as well, is he a perfect option? Is he that automatic fit that makes so much sense for the Royals to go out and acquire? He doesn't. But based on what you've had in the outfield the last couple of years, I feel that there is still some upside there. In worst case scenario, his bat doesn't play well. He's still a 200 hitter, a 220 hitter that gives you 10 home runs. He's giving you elite defense. And when we talk about fourth outfielders, we talk about guys that maybe play only 80 to 90 games a year. Well, if I'm not going to see their bat a ton, I want to know if I turn to him as a defensive replacement, he's going to be able to handle a corner outfield spot. That can be the difference in winning and losing you a game sometimes. Being able to run a ball down in the gap, being able to gun somebody out at the plate. And if Jack Caglione is getting pulled in the 7th inning due to a defensive replacement, I would rather have somebody that good defensively and know that at the plate, even if he's hitting 220, he's a bat that the Royals haven't had off the bench really the last couple of years. You've got power from the right side, somebody that can leave the yard at a higher clip. He's not always going to, and there's a reason the Rangers non-tendered him, but I feel it's a very intriguing option for them to target in free agency, especially if the other platoon options get scooped up rather quickly. But in my opinion, I feel that Adolis Garcia is about to be picked up rather quickly by somebody in the league. Do you believe the Royals should target Adolis Garcia in free agency? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. When we come back, I do have a little bit more confidence in the Royals acquiring Jarren Duran if they go that route. I'll tell you why next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about the title sponsor of today's episode in Gametime. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's incredibly frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. And Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Download the Gametime app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply, so again, use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go download Gametime today. The offseason rolls on, and we already saw a big trade that happened a few days ago, really just over the weekend, involving the Mets and the Rangers. Brandon Nimmo going to Texas, Marcus Semien going to the New York Mets. So maybe we're getting closer to that time period in the offseason where trades actually start happening. And our hope is that the Royals are going to be involved in one of those big trades, whether it be today, whether it be next week, next month. You're just hoping that they're going to be able to strike a deal. And we'll actually be getting Joel Penfield's thoughts tomorrow morning, planning on recording with him at some time tonight. We'll be posting that early Tuesday morning, get his thoughts on a potential trade, who his targets are, probably talk a little bit more about Adolis Garcia as well, assuming that he hasn't signed just yet with any team. I should probably clarify that. But more so about the trade route. We'll be going back and forth for 30 minutes about who he feels is a good fit and who he'd go all in for. And one of the names that I know for our listeners, they want to see the Royals go all in for is Jarren Duran. Not everybody, but a large chunk of them. Now, last week, Annie Rogers put out an article that somewhat compares to our Mailbag Friday, where people can comment in a question, and she'll be able to answer a couple of them in that article. And somebody asked, do you think the Royals can make a play for Jarren Duran? I thought Taylor Ward was the best fit, but with him off the board, I think Duran is now the best fit for the Royals. And he goes on to write, I think they can. I've heard that right now the price the Red Sox are asking for is too high for the Royals to feel comfortable about it. But we'll see how that shifts throughout the winter. The two teams match up on paper. The Royals want an outfielder who can add to their offense, which the Red Sox have in Jarren Duran or Wilyer Abreu. Boston wants major league ready starting pitching, and we know the Royals have that. And even going back to her last couple of articles, she has highlighted that the Royals are likely to make a trade at some point. I mean, instead of free agency, overpaying for somebody, they have a ton of pitching. I know some of our listeners don't like me using surplus of pitching. It's not a real thing. You should always have the depth there because it's what the lifeblood is of this team. But they also need a middle-of-the-order bat. They need somebody that can make a difference. And Jarren Duran is somebody that would make a difference in the Royals lineup, especially at the top half of the order. And if they want major league ready pitching, the Royals have 4 guys that they could flip to Boston for that type of bat. But early on in the offseason, because they don't have to move Jarren Duran, I'm sure the asking price is very high. They know the Royals are their best trade partner. At least that's my biased point of view. They know the Royals have an abundance of arms. They know they have a couple of guys that have multiple years of control that would fit nicely at Fenway Park. They also know they've got 5 outfielders. And really, the 3 top guys in that lineup, or the 3 top guys for that outfield, Wilyer Abreu in right because of the defense, Cedon Rafaela in center, and then you got Roman Anthony in left. I mean, Jarren Duran can be on Boston's team, but they can't play all those guys every single day. They also have Masataka Yoshida, who I'm sure they're looking to move, but that contract's going to make things a little bit tricky. But to know that Annie Rogers is writing, I think they can pull it off. It's clear that there is some belief the Red Sox asking price is going to go down the deeper we get into the offseason, because they still seem motivated to move him. But as every GM would do with a big-time player, or at least somebody that was at one point, you're going to start it off by asking for value of the guy they once were to see if you can get that bite. Right? Jarren Duran was a top 10 MVP guy in 2024. He was the All-Star Game MVP. He had an 8+ WAR season. I mean, he really blossomed in 2024. Stepped down in 2025, but your first instinct would be, we're going to see if somebody bites on the 2024 version of Jarren Duran. We're going to give up our number one prospect, our number two prospect, 2 big league starters. And we just want Jarren Duran that badly. We're willing to mortgage away just about everything. They'll try with that. But if you're motivated to move him, and in your mind, you've always thought about trading him, at least this offseason, that price is going to go down the closer you get to spring training. Because I feel they want to move him. I don't see them going into opening day with Jarren Duran on their roster. But they're going to hold off as long as they can for one sucker team to bite. And I'm still not ruling out the Royals being that sucker team. But to give up a lot for Jarren Duran. You get to December and there's no bites. And everybody's saying, no, we're not giving up this guy, and this guy for one player. Maybe the price comes down a little bit. What I'm gathering from this answer that Annie writes to a commenter's question is that the Red Sox are asking for something along the lines of Cole Reagans and maybe Blake Mitchell or Cole Reagans and Ryan Berger. I mean, they're asking for a lot. Because from what I'm gathering here, and I could be wrong, I absolutely could be wrong, it seems that they have spoken. Because she's saying, I've heard that right now, the price the Red Sox are asking for is too high for the Royals to feel comfortable about it. That leads me to believe they've had discussions. And too high feels like Cole Reagans and Michael Garcia. Or Vinny Pasquantino and Noah Cameron. Like, just far too high. And the Royals are never going to do a deal like that. They would just pivot to somebody else. But keep in mind, too, though the Red Sox have Jarren Duran, and they're a contending team, and they don't have to move him, they know they need pitching too. And they understand that if it's not Boston, somebody is going to inquire about the Royals starting pitching, and they're going to give the Royals the bat that they need. And if you're Boston, if you like Noah Cameron enough, you like Chris Bubic enough. I mean, John Morosi last week on MLB Network said his favorite deal with these two teams would be Chris Bubic for Jarren Duran. I don't believe that it would be a one-for-one deal. You'd still have to give up a little bit. But sometimes with players like Duran, in the same way I thought it was going to be this way for Rafael Devers, it's like there's no way they trade him because the asking price is going to be so astronomically high. Now, Devers, different situation. He was unwilling to play first base, right? He wanted to play third, and they had Bregman over there. And then he has the contract tied up, and the Giants made the move for him. He ended up being very good for them, and Boston still made the postseason, though they were bounced out in the wild card round by the New York Yankees. Still, it was a move where they didn't get a ton in return. And I know that the contract was the motivating factor along with his unwillingness to move positions. But with Jarren Duran, he's not a Shohei Ohtani, right? He's not an Aaron Judge. Eventually, that price is going to come down. Now, if you're JJ Picollo and you're the Royals, how long are you willing to wait? Because if Jarren Duran's your guy, the last thing you want is you're waiting and waiting and waiting. These other options fall off the board, and then somebody strikes a deal with Boston, getting Jarren Duran, and you're left, just kind of sticking your hands up in the air saying, what can we do now? Right? Free agency doesn't look that appetizing, and there's not really a bat out there via trade that we feel is really going to make a difference. That's the worst case scenario. You get deep into these discussions, you're just not matching up, and somebody overpays for Jarren Duran. But to hear that Annie Rogers says, I think they can match up, and just right now the asking price is too high, and it could very well come down later in the offseason, my belief is that if they're really targeting Jarren Duran, eventually there's going to be a deal that lines up very well. That's going to be too good for both sides to turn down. I mean, you talk about difference makers and outfielders, right? Of the guys that we've talked about, I know we brought up Brendan Donovan. He's going to be pretty expensive as well, and he's got 20-plus suitors. For Jarren Duran, I don't know if he has 20-plus suitors. Feels like it'd be a little bit less than what Brendan Donovan has just because it hasn't been reported, but it always could be. We could get word today that there are 10 teams that want Jarren Duran, and that's what Boston wants, because if they only have one or two suitors, you're not going to be able to ask for the moon, because maybe both those teams would back out at that point, and now you're not going to get that starting pitching that you want. And the Royals seem to have the upper hand, and they've got abundance of starting pitching, and they've got multiple guys that can replace somebody that they could deal to Boston. And so if you're the Red Sox, you want to have a number 3, number 4 in your rotation, the Royals are your best bet. And I'm not just saying that because I do a Royals podcast. They line up very well on paper, as Annie also wrote in that article. Do you feel that the Royals and the Red Sox are going to line up for a deal this offseason? And if so, who do you think is going to be involved? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second, find the all-night Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we are going to be talking with Joel Penfield of One Royal Way. Get his thoughts on the offseason, what deals he sees happening, and what his expectations are for the Royals going into 2026. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.